Hello, folks. My name is Lee Fogel. I'm an ambassador with the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, and I'm also the author of a book called A Matter of Life and Breath, which is about my own recovery of functional fitness and enjoyable life in spite of an interstitial lung disease called pulmonary fibrosis. I'm going to go over today, I'm going to be doing a presentation that I've done this past weekend at the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation Summit, which is a medical conference that was held in Orlando, Florida, and attended by 500 or 600 folks from medical community involved in pulmonary disease and rehabilitation, as well as patients and caregivers. So it was a great conference by the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, which the PFF is an organization that provides a lot of information to folks with lung disease and a lot of tremendous number of resources about drug trials and studies and the efficacy of certain treatments, things like that. I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation now, and we'll advance my slides and go to the first slide, which is here. So what was life like for me before pulmonary fibrosis? Well, on January 18th, my birthday in 2020, it was an ordinary day, like most days. I woke up in the morning, swam about 1,000 meters in the swimming pool, and afterwards we'd run 3 or 4 or 5 miles at a good pace. And then daily I walked 12 to 15,000 steps a day. And I was involved in the activities of starting a new company, which I'd been in the technology business for a number of years. My hobby was to do long distance running, long distance offshore swimming, and I was an Ironman triathlete. Photos here are showing me in the Ironman Wales and about to swim in the Irish Sea in the bottom right corner. And then the left side is finishing the Ironman in Florida for a time of 13 hours and 9 minutes. Not a great time, but this was in my 50s, and I transformed my life to be able to go out and race for 13 hours in a long distance endurance race like that. So I was in excellent shape. I was a biohacker. For many, many years, I had studied the exercise physiology and nutrition, and I took good care of myself, and I was never sick. But something happened to me in around January 20th of 2020, which we all recall that was the beginning of COVID. And I found myself deathly ill of a lung problem and coughing and couldn't breathe, and got really bad for a few days. I eventually recovered from that and started back to running and thought, well, I just had a bad flu. Wasn't really this COVID thing, but it was just a bad flu. However, after a few days of running and swimming again, something felt wrong. Didn't have the same endurance and stamina, and so I continued to get progressively worse and began to have shortness of breath, an persistent cough, and so it was a trying time for me, going from such a great physical condition to suddenly becoming weaker and weaker. And in 2020, as the spring came in that year, the hospital was filled with COVID patients, and I didn't go into a physician. My doctor told me it sounded like I had COVID, but I just needed to call them if I got very sick. And so I went to the emergency room twice that year. Both times they did X-rays, gave me antibiotics, and sent me home. But the second time they looked at my lung X-ray and the doctor said this. It was not really a good diagnosis, but he said, "Lee, your lungs are a mess." And so that meant that I had some serious things going on in my lungs. I was diagnosed. He sent me to a pulmonologist where I was performed a CT scan, and they diagnosed me with an advanced stage of interstitial lung disease, or idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. These are actual information slides from my report from the radiologist and my pulmonologist, where they discussed my situation. This was the second CT scan I had. This was in 2021. But they said I've got the normal things: the lymph node enlargement, honeycomb scarring, bronchiectasis, lung distortion, which means my lung architecturally had distorted due to the scarring that was occurring in my lung. And I had these things, these findings, they said, were representative of end stage end stage pulmonary fibrosis, and that was like getting hit with a ton of bricks to go from where I was to suddenly reading that I had end stage pulmonary fibrosis, and end stage meant possibly 3 years left to live, and so I immediately sort of went off the cliff. I became uh, very depressed, very anxious, very worried about my health. And I had this, went from a vision of an Iron Man to I saw myself as the old guy pushing the oxygen tank around. And suddenly I became the old guy sitting in the chair with an oxygen tank and never moving. Couldn't move much because I had this thing of oxygen shame. I didn't want to go out in public. I needed oxygen. The doctors had prescribed me with 24-hour use of oxygen because my oxygen saturation was so low, and I would drop down into the 70s just under normal exertion. So I became more and more weaker and weaker and declined more during what I call the 11 months in the Valley of Despair, where I lived. And the Valley of Despair was just a miserable place to be, thinking that I was dying soon and being alone and very sedentary. And the more sedentary I was, the worse I became, the weaker I became, the less I breathed normally through my diaphragm. I became just continually weaker and weaker. I was claustrophobic, as well as the one of the problems of sedentary people is at risk of blood clots and pulmonary embolisms, which I had 2 pulmonary embolisms that year. It's a miserable year. I had to pay people to walk my dogs. I could walk about 50 steps with 5 to 6 liters of oxygen on a tank, and I had to rest. So it was a very difficult time for me. I began to look at it later that year as I was so deeply depressed and started to return to my meditation practice, which I'd had a lifelong meditation practice. And I began to look at it like this. I said, gee, if I had gotten a diagnosis of blindness, suddenly I went blind here at my age, at 50, at that time, 63 years old. I go blind. I had a choice. I could sit at home and never go anywhere because I'm blind, couldn't get out, and just stay at home and hope for some magic cure for blindness where I would return my sight and I could just sit and be miserable and search, learn to read Braille, have a Braille keyboard so that I could search the internet for ways to cure blindness. Or I could use the fact that most blind people learn to move about this world by developing their other senses, their hearing, their touch, their smell, and they can get around in this world pretty well. Many blind people I've known. I know blind people who work out at the gym where I work out. You know, it's kind of crazy, but they're people who do amazing things. And so I thought of that. I said, well, so my lungs are like going blind. My lungs are my blindness, my eyes maybe. And what other senses, what other parts of me can I strengthen so that I can still have an enjoyable life? So I've come from a background of technology where I've designed applications and systems for insurance companies, for workers' compensation and injuries, to help people recover from injuries faster. And so I've studied a lot of injury recovery, and I looked at this and I said, well, what can I control? And that's what this presentation today is about. What are the factors that we can control to give ourselves a good quality of life? And I looked at it in these 5 categories of mobility, mental, heart, nutrition, and lungs. Knowing that lungs were severely damaged in my case, what could I do to strengthen the others? So to look at that, I began to break them down and develop a plan for each area. So from a mental standpoint, mental strength, what are my beliefs? Do I believe that I'm dying? Do I believe that I can overcome great adversity and still live? And do I have faith that, what is my faith? Do I have some vision and goals? What is my vision? Is my vision that old guy in the recliner dying slowly? Or is my vision, once again, getting on a bike and riding and swimming and things like that? What kind of goals do I have? And through meditation, I developed equanimity, which is a mental calmness and that helped me to overcome my anxiety and depression. In terms of mental strength, one of the most important things, all of us, is to get good quality 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. No exceptions. 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Very critical. The area of mobility and strength. Well, I had there's an understanding in injury recovery and surgery recovery that it's a 1 to 3 ratio. Every 1 week of bed rest, it's going to take 3 weeks to recover. I spent 11 months in a recliner. So for me to recover, I lost a tremendous amount of strength by doing so. I lost from 185 pounds of muscle and very low body fat, strength. I had good strength. From that 185 pounds, I lost 30 pounds of muscle, 35 pounds actually, and I weighed 150 pounds by the end of 2021. So I lost. One of the most important aspects of our health is our skeletal muscle strength, our muscle strength to keep us balanced, and it has a metabolic effect on the use of nutrients, and mobility strength is our body armor. Our skeletal muscles are our body armor, and our strong muscles use oxygen more efficiently, and so with impaired lungs, I had to maximize every bit of oxygen that I had that I could consume, whether it's from an oxygen tank or from the ambient air. I had to be able to enable my body to do more with that oxygen. I used supplemental oxygen immediately. I'd been using it for a year. And so I thought about this and said, well, I can use it to get stronger. I can crank the oxygen up and work out, do muscle strength training. I began, looked at what do I need to do in terms of walking. I've got to get back to walking more. Walking is one of the healthiest things we can possibly do as we get older. And I needed functional strength. I didn't want to just lift weights. I wanted to be functionally strong so that I can do things, normal things in life, like carry heavy things, carry my groceries, things like that, bending over, squatting down, and doing hard things in a way that increase my heart rate, because heart strength is improved by taking that heart and working and exercising in such a fashion that we rev up the RPMs of the heart, so to speak, or we increase our heart rate. These are things you need to check with your physician on, but your maximum heart rate is typically, as a rule of thumb, it's 220 minus your age. I'm 66 now, so my maximum heart rate is 154. So I want to exercise in 3 zones on a daily basis. One is a base level of aerobic exercise, which is just probably 60% of maximum heart rate, which would be about 90 beats per minute. And then I also want to spend about 10% of my time revving my heart rate up, getting that heart rate accelerated. That's where the strength of the heart comes in. And it's recommended that you do that at least 3 times a week with somewhere around 10 minutes bursts of what's called zone 4. And that's 85% of maximum heart rate. Again, for me, maximum heart rate being 154, 85% of that is about 100 in the 130 plus range. And so an important aspect of being able to strengthen your heart is to monitor and track your improvement. And you can't do that unless you measure your heart rate. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. Heart-wise nutrition is critical, and also knowing your ratios of your heart rate. When it goes up, what's going on with your oxygen saturation? Having a pulse oximeter is critical for folks who have interstitial lung disease. And then last, lung strength. All right, so let's look at it like this. Lung strength for me, we have, as human beings, somewhere around 450 million alveoli, the little tiny air sacs in our lungs that take the air in and move the oxygen into the capillaries, and then move the carbon dioxide back out that we breathe out. So those alveoli are our gas exchange mechanisms. Well, I had 2/3 of my capability, according to the physicians, were lost. That meant I had maybe, rather than 450 million alveoli remaining, I had about 150 million alveoli. So my view on that is a mechanistic view. Well, if I've only got 150 million and they're all down here caught up in this web of scarring that's in my lungs, I'm going to maximize the amount of air that I can get into my lungs so that I can make sure that it gets down to the deepest part of the lungs, which are the most alveoli rich lungs. Up here, upper chest breathing is not doing a heck of a lot for you. You want to be breathing from your belly, from your diaphragm, with your belly extended when you're inhaling, okay, and collapsing as you exhale. So there's a lot of information out there on how to breathe properly. Most people breathe wrong. If your upper chest is moving when you're breathing, you're doing it wrong. So uh, I had to apply some injury recovery methods. We don't freeze a joint once it's been injured. We move that joint. We want to move to break up the scar tissue. So I wanted to, the intercostal muscles are the muscles between your ribs, and I wanted to expand my rib cage. So I embarked on what's called, I call them the Magic 3 lung exercises. If you send me an email after this, after you watch this, send me an email to my address. I will send you a link to the Magic 3 lung exercises. They're also in my book, and they come from the Shanghai Respiratory Hospital. There's 3 simple exercises. For the last 2 years, I've done those 3 simple exercises twice a day, morning and evening. I would not ever miss a day because they expand my lungs and help me to breathe more effectively, more efficiently. I became a student of breathing methods, and you should too understand breathing and different types of breathing methods, those sorts of things. Also know that the most important type of breathing is nasal breathing. The nose is for breathing, the mouth is for eating. If you're a mouth breather, that's a problem. Okay, if you wake up with a dry mouth in the morning, you're a mouth breather. Okay, you want to breathe nasally. I use mouth tape, small piece of tape the size of a postage stamp, stick it over my lips so that my lips don't open easily at night so that I can breathe always through my nose. When you breathe through your nose, you concentrate the air. It focuses it through the turbinado, whatever terminates within the nose and pressurizes the air to drive it down deep into your lungs. It also filters the air through the cilia in your nose, removing pollutants. It also warms the air that's going into your lungs, so you're not bringing cold air into your upper bronchial tubes. It also, let's see, warms, pressurizes, cleanses, and it humidifies the air also. So nasal breathing is absolutely paramount. If you're not doing that, you've got to learn to nasal breathe. Even if you have to go resort to mouth taking, there's lots of information out there on that on the internet. And lastly, buying a digital spirometer is a $30 item. If you're a lung disease patient, you go to the hospital or to the big medical facilities once a year, maybe once every 9 months, and get your PFTs done. And I know lots of people who worry about how they're doing. Well, I don't. I track my PFTs weekly, and I've been tracking them for 2 years weekly because I use a digital spirometer, so I can see that my lung volume has improved. You don't have to wait. You do want to do the PFTs because they can measure things like what's known as DLCO, which is the actual gas exchange permeability of the lungs, and you can't measure that at home. That takes a machine that costs $500,000. You don't want one of those in your house. So a $30 digital spirometer will tell you on a regular basis how your lungs are doing, if you're losing volume, that sort of thing, so you can get to your doctor. Lastly, nutrition power. Without whole food, mostly plant-based, sufficient protein, without that, you're the non-starter. If you're not eating healthy, it's time to change that significantly. Eliminating all processed foods, highly processed foods, eating whole, unprocessed foods, mostly plant-based, and a sufficient source of animal protein. As we get older, folks we begin to lose muscle mass from the age of about 40 on. And after 60, 65, it starts to lose it a good bit. That means that our bodies are getting weaker, that we are more apt to fall, be unstable, unsteady, not have the balance, and not have the strength. An indicator of longevity is grip strength. It's amazing but grip strength is very important. Maintaining grip strength is important. So not sure how I got into that off of nutrition, but yeah, because of animal protein. If you're not eating if you're vegetarian, it's harder to be able to get enough protein, animal source protein. I follow the rule of about 0.8 to 1 gram per body pound of body weight. Today I weigh 180 pounds again, and so that's close to 180 grams of protein a day. That's not easy to do always, and but you need that level of protein to maintain the muscle mass in order to prevent the injuries and to be metabolically more healthy. Low to no sugar, uh, and no nighttime snacks, no nighttime meals. I don't eat anything after 5 p.m. in the afternoon. Zero, zilch, nothing. Drink nothing. I drink water before from then on because you want full gastric emptying so that your body can begin to work on repair and the things that your body does in that early few hours of sleep, the cleansing of your synovial fluids, things like that. It's critical, very critical. Okay, so let's talk about my journey back. I followed this approach, and I started slowly with increased walking daily. I used to walk a lot daily. I used to run, swim, all that such things. And when I started back in the end of 2021, pardon me, I started with increased walking every day, and I remember hitting the goal of actually getting back to 3,000 steps a day. How it felt like a miracle that I was able to do that. I did all that with supplemental oxygen. I'm not wearing supplemental oxygen right now because it gets in the way of talking and that sort of thing sometimes. But if I start coughing, I've got my cannula here nearby. I'll put it on and reoxygenate. Anyway, so I started slowly with increased walking, added lung and diaphragmatic breathing exercises every single day, every day. And I went to pulmonary rehab. Sometimes that is geared to very weak people. So you've got to really push yourself there. Pulmonary rehab is a place, I see it as a place where it's a safe space where you can learn your limits and where to push your limits and what your oxygen saturation does at certain levels of heart rate and that sort of thing. And for a lot of folks, it's twice a week and it's hard to get there. So using an online or a Zoom based is what I did for pulmonary rehab. But pulmonary rehab is not twice a week, not once a week. It's not a passive activity where you show up and they tell you what to do. It's one where you learn what to do and apply it all the time, every day, pulmonary rehab. So I gradually added strength training, using stretch cords, things like that. Don't have to be throwing around big weights, things to just build muscle strength. I use supplemental oxygen to level the fit playing field. That's my superpower. I'm the only guy you'll ever see in this big Crunch Fitness gym here in Florida. I'm the only guy I've ever seen in there out of 800 to 1,000 people on a daily basis in there that carries an oxygen tank. I carry an oxygen tank on my back. And it allows me to do workouts that people half my age can't do. If you look at these pictures here, the bottom right-hand corner is in the gym. I've got an oxygen tank on my back. There's my feet there, but I'm doing box jumps on a 24 or 30-inch box. That means I'm standing still. Standing still, I jump to the top of a box. Explosive muscle power. And I'm able to do those things because I use the oxygen. But it also makes me stronger so that I can do more even without oxygen some. For example, I don't walk with oxygen any longer. And I used to require 5 or 6 liters of oxygen flow, continuous flow, to walk 50 steps. Stronger muscles use oxygen more efficiently. That's just the net. Now, my muscles have been strengthened to the point that I walk 4 miles a day without oxygen. And that's kind of unheard of for a person with the seriousness of my condition as it was, I'll say, because I don't confess that it's still the same, even though diagnosis and CT scans may look like that. I just don't accept that. I believe I'm stronger than those diagnostics would tell me. I track all possible metrics. I wear an Apple Watch, and I track everything possible. My sleep score, I look at it every morning when I wake up, know how did I sleep last night, what was my heart rate variability, all those different things. What was my sleeping heart rate? I know all this data, and I was using this before I got sick, and so I've got 4 years of data that I can look at and you'll see a couple of slides in a minute that describe the power of tracking your metrics. it keeps you motivated and it keeps you knowing how you're really doing. Some days you don't feel that great. Some days you feel okay, but just that's all subjective. You're flying blind if you don't know specifically what your heart rate was when you were sleeping last night. Well, why did I sleep so poorly? Oh, gee, that's right. We went out with friends and I had a glass of wine at 7 p.m. last night, and my sleep score plummeted. So you can choose to change those things because you know uh, what's affecting you. I focus on functional strength and cardio. The bottom left-hand corner of this screen here shows a little. I've had nice home gyms before with mirrors and weight sets and ellipticals and all those sort of things. Now I'm all alone living in Florida in a little retirement community, and I have an outdoor gym. That's my outdoor gym. There are two jugs of water. A jug of water is 8.3 pounds. There's a sandbag there worth about 35 pounds. There's a cement block there of 35 pounds. There's a stretch cord, and there's an oxygen tank. I use those and do an amazing amount of working out with just those things. And I do hard things like that cement block. I carry that with me around the block. I carry it in my hand, builds grip strength. That's called a farmer's carry. And carrying something heavy in one hand and then switching hands, going back and forth with it. It builds balance. It's a great way to walk, and it will rev your heart rate up significantly. It's funny though, I'm out walking. I do this about 5 times a week. I walk around the block twice with the cement block, and invariably people stop and they see this guy with an oxygen tank and a cannula in his nose, and they see him carrying a cement block, and they stop and say, "Sir, where are you going with that? Can I help you?" And I tell them it's my exercise. People in golf carts in Florida, which are very popular in Florida, people buy golf carts to drive half a block to the community pool rather than walk, but that's their thing. But they stop in golf carts and say, "Can I help you carry that block somewhere?" No, this is my exercise. And it's fun to do things like that. I like functional strength, things like that. So it took me about 12 months before I could resume a normal, healthy lifestyle. And today, 24 months later, I do archery. I play paddleboard. I golf. I play golf. I swim on the pool. I leave my tank on the side of the pool where I can stop and reoxygenate between every 2 to 3 laps or so. So I also do some running, not a lot of distance running, but I do some running and I carry oxygen for that. So we can resume, and I have resumed normal life. Pardon me. This is a screenshot from my Apple Watch app, which shows the history for a week at a time, but it also shows what my workouts for that particular day was. This particular day is Sunday. My average workout heart rate was 98. I had high intensity, like I spoke of greater than 85% of maximum. I had high intensity for 7 minutes. I had a high intensity a little in the zone just before that of 7 minutes, and then I had the more broader aerobic workout in the a lower zone, 40 minutes of that. And the walking mostly was around 85 beats per minute or something like that. So that's a good base level of active movement. So invest in a fitness tracker. It's so valuable. You get your personal historic view of how you've been doing, and it's motivating. It helps you to be consistent. This is my best accountability partner and friend. Nobody has to hold me accountable. This does. I look at it and say, where am I doing? What am I doing today? How many hours have I stood? How many minutes have I stood today? I've been sitting on my butt all day. What is my calorie burn for the day, that sort of thing. So it also allows you to fine tune your exercise. I look at this, Saturday of this particular week, I didn't push it really hard. Thursday of last week, I did. I can go back and look at it and say, oh yeah, Thursday I did a bicycle ride, and I did, carried my block around the block a couple of times. So I can look back and say, what are the things that really got my heart rate going? I can compare that to my sleep scores and see that I sleep better after good hard workouts like that. Another view of this is to look at the beauty of what have I been doing over the last 6 weeks. 41% of my time exercising has been walking. That's good. I've done 23%, almost a fourth of my time doing high intensity interval training. Love that. And then there's easier things that are more fun, like paddleboard, stand-up paddleboarding, hiking, Tai Chi, things like that. So varying your workout, making it exercise not something where you've got to slog to the gym and sit on and run on a treadmill, staring at CNN screens. I walk outdoors. I don't do treadmills. I walk outdoors, whether it's hot, cold, rainy, whatever. I like to walk outdoors on uneven ground. Walking on uneven ground is much better for us. It's going to exercise your calf muscles, your balance muscles, your ankles, and your feet. So I walk barefoot a lot also because it connects you to the Schumann frequency, their magnetic frequency. It's amazing how that reduces inflammation. So let's look at a quick few of things before IPF, a year after diagnosis, and now. My daily exercise minutes before IPF back in 2019 was about 97 minutes per day. It fell off the cliff in 2020 and went all the way down to an average of 11 minutes per day in 2021. And then I climbed out of that hole. 2022 got better, and now I'm back at 98 minutes per day in exercise. What's the result of that? This is the key right here. My heart has gotten stronger. My heart is as strong as it's been since I was in my 40s. My walking beats per minute in 2021, when I was at my least healthy, with sitting in the recliner, it was 115 beats per minute. That's high. I used to run marathons with a heart rate lower than that. And this was walking with oxygen in 2021, 115 beats per minute. Today, 2023, my walking heart rate is about 84 on average for the last year, almost, without, I repeat, without oxygen supplementation. I use oxygen in all my workouts except for walking. And I utilize it at home when I sleep, when I'm sitting around at home. So I keep oxygen all the time, but I just don't like to wear it when I'm walking, and I like to test myself. And my heart rate is strong, and my oxygen saturation stays adequate. My resting heart rate has been a 32% improvement in that. In my sickest, I was 75 beats per minute. That's high. A lot of people listening to this, yours is that high or greater. Today, it's 51 beats per minute. That's an athletic level of resting beats per minute. And it's not because I'm some amazing athlete. I'm a 66-year-old guy, and I've been through a severe sickness, and that's what we can get back to. In over 3 years with an advanced pulmonary fibrosis, a 31% DLCO, which is the oxygen gas exchange, which says mine works about 31% as good as a normal person's, and 28% lung function, about 28% of what a normal person's lung function is. I've had no loss of forced vital capacity. In fact, I've had an improvement in forced vital capacity, the key measure of pulmonary function. I've had an improvement in lung volume of 75%, even though that's not shown in this 28% lung function. I've seen the actual numbers. These are spirometry scores recorded by me using a digital spirometer and recorded every week for the last couple of years. Net, if you focus on mobility, mental strength, heart strength, nutrition, strengthening what's left of your lungs, these will support whatever medical treatment strategy you follow. I do not use antifibrotic medications. I take no pharmaceutical medications. I take some supplements and vitamins, and I eat good quality food, but I don't take any medications to help me sleep or lower my heart rates or anything like that. I'm medication free. I don't even take a Tylenol. I don't take an Advil. I don't take any of that stuff. Okay. But no matter what, if you are taking those things, if you are taking medication, having a good terrain, healthy terrain, the body terrain, through these types of focus on good quality health focus, it's going to improve the effectiveness of your medications. Okay. They're not fighting against the unhealthy terrain. It's going to improve your balance and injury avoidance. It's going to give you a stronger immune system. And if you are a candidate for a lung transplant, you got a better chance of getting one if you're strong and healthy. And you got a better chance of coming through it very well and recovering fast if you're strong and healthy. I've got friends who've had lung transplant, and I know the ones who have come through it really well have been those who are in great shape. In summary, what are the 5 most important actions in my recovery? Proper breathing and lung muscle exercise every single day. Never miss a day. Functional whole body exercise with heart rate zone training. I do I exercise every day, something. Some days are harder than others. Some days I don't feel like working out much, but I get my daily at least 30 minutes every day in. Normally I get at least somewhere around 60, 70 minutes a day. I sleep quality and quantity. Use a sleep tracker. You can't measure it, you can't manage it. This will help you. You'll be amazed at how much better you'll sleep when you begin to take a look at what are the things that prevent you from sleeping well. And then your mindset, beliefs, and visions. Look, it's the things here that we have to do to overcome blindness or lung problems are hard. This is not easy. It's hard. And so that's the what we have to do. The what we have to do is to live every day in a way that maximizes our strength. And so that's the what. The why has got to be bigger. The why has always got to be bigger than the what. So why are you living? I know folks who are just hanging on and just like they're plotting toward maybe a lung transplant, but they're miserable and they don't have any vision. And so, I mean, I have to ask myself, why am I living? Why do I want to live? What can I give back to this world? What can I do to enjoy life and make the world great for me and great for the people I love and great for people I don't know? What can be my purpose? I volunteer for hospice, so I'm able to work with families of people who are dying as well as the folks who are dying and be there with them near the end and at the end sometimes. And it gives me a lot of gratitude and appreciation for help, and also helps me come even closer to understanding, what death is like. Um, and then lastly, the highest quality nutrition. I'll leave you with this quote, and that is that life is 10% what happens to you, and 90% how you respond to that. I became weak, unhealthy, and depressed, but that was not caused by pulmonary fibrosis. That was simply my reaction to it. When I chose to change my response, my life changed dramatically, and pulmonary fibrosis could not stop me from enjoying life. I wrote a book about my journey. It was a recommendation from my physician. She actually wrote the foreword to it called A Matter of Life and Breath. I donate all the proceeds of this book to the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. And lastly, wearing a cannula is cool. These are photos from the movie Dune, where they're on a planet that doesn't have good oxygen. So everybody wears a cannula there. So they're kind of cool. I like the one-sided ones. Thinking I might want to get me one of those. Anyway, thanks very much for your time today. I hope this has been helpful to you. Reach out to me by email or on Facebook or whatever, and I can answer any additional questions you may have. With that, I will stop screen share and stop the recording.